All right, so we do have quite a few people here from all over the world: South Africa, Germany, Canada, the Netherlands, Australia, New Zealand, India, and of course a lot of folks from the U.S. Um, so I'm Sean Halloran. I'm going to be introducing Liz Dunham for our first IPPS micro meeting. So the micro meeting, basically, as you know, our whole lives have moved online for a lot of people around the world. And the local area meeting committee members thought that this format could be a way for IPPS members to show off their work in little sort of bite-sized meetings. And so our first meeting is going to be led by Liz Dunham, who, of Knight Hollow Nursery, who's going to give us a virtual tour of this one-of-a-kind tissue culture lab that focuses on woody plants. So they do the really hard stuff. So Liz is from Middleton, Wisconsin, was named to GPN's 40 under 40 class of 2020. Whoop, whoop. And serves on IPPS Eastern Region Board of Directors, as well as a few other committees, right, Liz? But yeah, I think everybody should sit back and enjoy this awesome tour we're about to receive. And let me know via the chat or private messages if you're experiencing any technical difficulties. Mark, just let me know that there's a little bit of feedback. That's probably just the nature of being in a tissue culture facility there, but if that continues when I'm not talking, we'll address that. But basically the chat should be a place where you can say where you're from, talk to people, and then the Q&A, which we're going to do at the end, there's a little Q&A thing at the bottom of your screen, and you can start asking questions right away. Those will be questions directed for Liz and our special guest, Deb, which will be announced at the end. So I will get out of the way of greatness and let Liz take over the tour.
All right, well, hello everybody. Thank you for coming to our first IPPS micro meeting. It's exciting for me because a small tissue culture lab, we don't normally have a lot of people coming in for a tour. So this is a great way for me to introduce all of you to Knight Hollow Nursery. Our lab was founded by my mother, Deb McCowan, in 1981. She started the business in her basement, and we've moved a couple times. We started this facility in 2004. The highway came through and took out our old building, and so we rebuilt right here. I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison for something completely unrelated, and I got a degree in art. And then I realized that I really loved working with plants once I graduated, and I started working here. I find it very rewarding to grow the plants, see them go out, get good feedback from our customers, and then get money in and be able to support my employees. We currently have 4 full-time employees, 6 full-time employees, and then a couple part-timers. We hire more in the busy season, and our busy season is in the winter because you want tissue culture plants before you start your spring busy season. So our plants will normally go to somebody's greenhouse, get grown on, and then get planted in the field in the summer or early spring. Like I said, my mother, Deb McCowan, founded this company. She used some technology that my father helped invent at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where he helped develop the woody plant medium that we grow the plants on. We actually make all of our own media, and we can curtail the recipes to whatever we see needed for the plants that we have. We have a wide variety of plants that we do. They're mostly woody ornamental plants, but we also do fruit crops and a couple herbaceous things for, you know, some of our good buddies that we throw in just to have something different to do. So that's pretty much the intro for Knight Hollow Nursery. And currently we are in the part of the company, which is the culture room is what we call it. And I'm just gonna switch over to the other side and show you guys some of their stuff. Got a cameraman going here. We're pretty low tech. This isn't what we do. So once again, welcome to Knight Hollow Nursery. We're in Middleton, Wisconsin. It's just outside Madison, sort of in the south central area of Wisconsin. Working in a enclosed facility means that we can grow plants all year. And like I said, we do a wide variety of plant crops, and I will show you some of the plants that we have here. This is our culture room. We run on all LEDs now. We have a dedicated cooling system. We never need to run heat in here because the lights generate enough heat. We have had great success with the LEDs. We definitely don't have to cool quite as much, and the plants seem to love the lighting. We got a grant from Focus on Energy in order to switch all these bulbs over to the LED. And I will show you some of the cultures that we have here. Like I said, we grow all of our stuff on our own recipes. We still use the baby food jars. And where's that one? Here. So we grow a lot of blueberries. So, oh, that's a lot. I'll start with this. So these are blueberry cultures. And we can fit a lot of blueberries in one culture. The lights will be on 8 hours and then they'll cycle off for 4 hours just to help with the heat load. And I think the plants also like getting a little downtime. This room is never completely dark, but the 3 benches will cycle through the 8 hours on and the 4 hours off. We sell a lot of blueberries. These go directly out of culture. We'll take them out of the culture, rinse them off, put them in a baggie, and we have a contract with a grower, Mike DeGranchamp, in Michigan, and they go in a cooler and we ship them over the lake, and they go brown for like 20 bucks, so we can fit 10,000 in a cooler and they get here the next day. So these are really good for us. Most labs that do woodies do blueberries. Like I said, you can fit a lot in a culture. It's kind of a bread and butter crop for us. And another one that we do a lot of, these are lilacs, so syringa. They're obviously ornamental. We do all the colors that exist in a syringa. We do these all sizes, so they'll go occasionally out of culture, but mostly we'll do rooted plants and then some liners, and I'll show you all of those coming up here, the bigger sizes that we do. This is actually another blueberry, and I wanted to show you this because so this is the difference between on your right is tip culture. On the left is what we call, so we separate the tips and the mids in our culture. We realize that once you take a cutting, that top cutting is going to grow the fastest. And the ones coming after that that have the axillary buds are going to grow just a little bit slower. So we grow everything in these bags because the number one thing that's going to take down a tissue culture lab, besides mixing plants up and then selling them as the wrong thing, is going to be thrips. And this is just an extra line of defense for us against the thrips. They have to get through the baggie and then in through the top and then propagate themselves in there. We have had thrips. I think every lab probably has had them. And we have our own protocol in order to deal with them. It is something that, you know, it's just one of those pests. It's the number one pest for tissue culture lab. These right here, this is a birch. This is Heritage, Betula nigra. nigra. We have a contract to grow about 40,000 birch for Ron Amos Evergreen Nursery in Sturgeon Bay. So these get planted in February and they go out in March or April, at least they were. A lot of our stuff is actually getting moved to later in the season because I think a lot of the growers have become so efficient and so fast at growing the smaller items. This right here, this is a rose. So this is a new rose that we got in fall of last year. One of the reasons that people come to a tissue culture lab is because it is the fastest way to generate a whole bunch of the same plant. So like I said, this came in, I don't know, maybe August or September last year. It might have even been later. And we shipped out 5,000 or so to Canada for Todd Baker at Baker's Nursery last 2 weeks ago or so in plugs. And they were pretty hefty plants. I mean, they had some nice growth. They were starting to flower. So you can get a lot of the same plant quickly. Often there's one plant, something very special from a breeder. They send us that one plant in full wide growth, and we'll make copies of them as quickly as we can. The other reason that people will come to a tissue culture lab is because there is no other way to propagate that plant. They're not successful from cutting, they don't do well with grafting, seeds are not easy as well, so we'll do them in the tissue culture lab. It's an environment that many plants will respond to, and they will multiply at a hopefully consistent rate after we do a little bit of manipulation on them. And I have a few graphs that I'd like to show you now that you've seen some of the plants. And my camera guy is going to put them up. Let me know when you got the first one on there. These are just graphs that we have made up in order to highlight the tissue culture process and sort of help you visualize what it is that we do when we get a new plant. Can you figure it out here?
They're missing.
Missing. That's okay. I have them on the wall. I can hold them up. It's something that we keep in our lab on the wall because we'll get a fair amount of tours. You want me to grab them?
Oh, I'll take you over there. I'm just trying to figure out how to get out. All right.
Okay. So we'll just go over here. It's sort of our little learning center. So right here, we have the process of tissue culture. So when we get a plant in, and they'll go into our greenhouse normally, we'll get a potted plant, it'll flush new growth. We'll take cuttings from that and we'll put it into what we call isolation. So we're gonna clean it and then put it into culture. And what it's gonna do is it's gonna flush new growth. It's already got energy from the plant that was in the pot. And then it's gonna sort of sit in culture and we're gonna, turn it over a couple times, maybe put it on new media, and it's gonna have this funny growth and decide if and when it wants to grow in culture. And then eventually we're gonna get a steady growth, something with a multiplication rate that we can count on to fill the orders, and then it's in commercial production. Some plants will take a couple months. Some plants will take a few years in order to get stabilized in culture. That's the trick to running a tissue culture lab, is to figure out how to get something stabilized in culture. The other graph that I have here, so this is pretty simple, and it's a lot like taking cuttings in a greenhouse, softwood cuttings, hardwood cuttings, whatnot. So we have in our hood, we have, let's say this is a lilac. Here's the cutting, and we're gonna cut at all of the nodes. And like I said, we're gonna separate the tips versus the mids. Well, these are mids down here, tips and mids, because the apical dominance is going to have these grow faster. And these are gonna take a little bit more time, so time plus a week. But if successful, they will grow hopefully from each of the buds at that juncture. So hopefully that helps you visualize a little bit of what we do here. It's all about time and getting things clean and then manipulating the plants so that they will grow well in this environment. Some do, some don't. Most of what we've gotten, we are successful with, but there are some things that we just haven't gotten started. And there may be other labs that have gotten them to go, and for whatever reason, we haven't. You know, we're pretty good at what we do these days. We've been doing it for a long time. Let me show you just real quick now that you've seen that. So this is what we call a new isolation. So these were plants that were out in the greenhouse, let's see, 7/16 last week or so. And we washed them and we put them in culture, and it looks like they're just starting to grow. So hopefully they'll continue to do that, and in about 3 weeks, we'll be able to take more cuttings. 3 weeks is the cycle in here. 3, 4, maybe 5 weeks. We can turn over plants and get a doubling, a tripling, a quadrupling. For the blueberries, you're gonna get probably 4 times or more for one plant, which is what we want, because then we can make a whole bunch quickly. The less that we handle the plant, the more money we're gonna make. And this is a commercial business. We work a lot with arboretums, we work with breeders, we work with commercial growers, we do old plants, we do a lot of new plants. There's a whole variety here, and mostly woody plants, like I said. So I think we're gonna take you on and show you the rest of the lab now that you've seen the real heart of the business. I'll show you how we do this. So come on over to our, what we call our hood room. And this is a small company. We've got 3,000 square feet and we do 500,000 plants out of that. So this is Shannon. She's one of my favorite techs. She's been with us for 4 years or so. So this is our hood room. We run 7 hoods. Most of the time they're not all full, but in the busy season they are. We have 3 dedicated staff that do this room only. So they're solely tissue culture techs. And Shannon is working on, we have here, Oasis Birch. And these are pretty hefty plants, so they should be a good teaching tool for this. And she is using her scissors and her tweezers. We don't use the knives, the scalpels or anything. We don't put anything down. This is the mode that we've developed, and we find it to be quite effective. So you see she's gonna pick up the plant, and we don't need a lot of these, so she's gonna just cut off the bottom, make them all pretty, and then that's the mid cutting. And what she has there, that'll be the tip cutting. So the tips are gonna grow a little faster. Yep, see, and this would be the size that she's holding right now. That would be the size that we would plant. But we don't need these right now. They're just on maintenance. We don't need them till next spring. So she's just continuing them in culture for us. So we'll keep a certain number all year so that when we need to, we can start increasing them. Tissue culture is all about, keeping a schedule just like any plant propagation. You have to know when you need to increase it in order to meet that order. So we'll start increasing these in a couple months or so. These grow really fast. They're one of the fastest growers. So this is great. And then we will show you the media prep room. So that was sterile conditioned under the hood. It's a laminar flow hood. We use individual hoods because the employees really like them, and we're not big enough to run big baker hoods. It keeps the hot air from going on your face. You can see the plexi in front of her. Everybody gets their own station. They get to decorate it. They have their own tools. If they don't finish a crop, they can leave it in there for the next day. We find that these are really employee friendly for us. And so we've ordered a few more through the years just to keep it consistent. This is our media prep room. You've seen the baby food jars. They're all round. We've used them forever. They work for us. We have round autoclaves. We have round buckets. This is where we make all of our media. We make quite a few different recipes. And the #1 hormone that we use is zeatin. So that's our cytokine that we like to use. It's expensive, but the plants love it. Occasionally we'll use a little bit of EA for anchors and some things like that. We don't use any more 2IP. If you are familiar with tissue culture at all, you'll know what I'm talking about. Yeah, so we have one tech that comes in and he will make media for us probably 3 to 4 times a week. Currently, in the busy season, he'll be making media 5 times a week. And these came out of the autoclave, so this is all sterile now. And they haven't set. There's a gelatin in there that will help them set. So as soon as they're cool, they will look like, here, I can show you over here. We keep the light off because there's lights in the hoods and everybody can see better that way. So this is the finished product. So this is what we put our plants into. So this is our hood room. This is where we do all the transferring. You've seen the media prep room. That's where we do all of the mixing of the media that we need. Of course, we have a dishwasher that runs a lot because we reuse all of our jars. We don't send any tubs out. If we send stuff out of culture, it's washed in a baggie. So this is the planting room. We're one of the few labs that does rooting on our plants. This is the #1 way that we sell our plants. There's a lot of customers that can't take things directly out of culture, so we put roots on them. And we have an indoor growing space in order to do that. We have 3 benches with 7 levels. All the lights can be run separately. They are also on an 8-4 time schedule, so they're 8 hours on, 4 hours off, and we turn them on and off as needed. This is not a busy season for us. This is probably the lowest that we will get in here. July, August, September are pretty minimal, although we will be starting a fall crop coming up soon. Our busy season is really January, February, March, April, and then things start to slow down. Like I said, people are starting to take things a little later, but that's generally where the busy season for us is. So if you come in here in March, all of these benches will be completely lit. We can grow almost 100,000 plants in here. In the culture room, we can do 500,000 at a time. And you can turn those over every 3 weeks. In here, it takes about 6 weeks and we can turn them over. So you're looking at from sub date to ship date for this size, it's 2 or 3 months, which is pretty quick. So you give us an order in winter. If we have it in culture already, we can have it to you early spring, no problem. That's for something that we already have in culture. If it's a new plant, it's going to take a little longer and cost a little more. Lately, we've been doing a lot more plug production, which we really like. We have in the past done almost exclusively bed rooting in 10-20 flats with mix that we buy in, but we've been trying these plug flats. Everybody seems to really like them. They save us a ton of time in shipping. So lately we've been shipping out pallets of plugs, 5,000 at a minimum, and they'll go out to Oregon, or they'll go to the West or East Coast, or they'll go,
Tennessee.
Ohio. Yeah, somewhere around there. Those are our big sellers. And the plants, like I said, they seem to really like it. The people really like it. The customers like it because they are quick to transplant. So this is Almus Frontier. And these were planted. These are getting really big. These are actually planted in June from tissue culture. So these are going to go out to Canada on Monday. And here we're doing Tom Malner's hazelnuts from Rutgers. So this is one of his new Avalana hazelnuts that is Eastern filbert blight resistant. And they're going to go to Pineland Nursery in New Jersey, aka Foggy Bottom. Here we have some, let's see what this looks like, Olay elms, and these are going to go to surface nursery in a few weeks once we have enough. Just like this. He orders a lot of the Alay or Ali or however they say it out there in the West. What else do we have in here? Oh, we have roses. So this is, which one is this? This is Bam Rose by Concept Plants. Isn't it cute? Sometimes they flower pretty quickly, especially the roses. And you can see the nice uniformity that we get from tissue culture. This is what it's supposed to look like from tissue culture. So these were done 7/7. So that is pretty quick. I'm taking the lid off. You can see that we do domes. It's very low tech, but it works, especially since we do such a wide variety of crop with different timing. We sell acclimated product. It's not acclimated to high light outside, but it's acclimated to low humidity. So you can see down here our very high-tech way of acclimating plants where we have a clothespin. So the plants start out like this, completely closed. So these are bed-rooted right here. Those are rhubarb. This is the lilac. These are now acclimated to low humidity. This one right here, this is not. So this is a little bit behind this flat here, and they are still rooting. So after probably 3 weeks, they're well-rooted enough that I can start to crack the lid. So we'll sort of crack it like that, and then we'll put the clothespin on, and we'll continue the process. Let a little more air in, a couple more days, let a little more air in, and then you can take the cover completely off. At that stage, they're like this, and they're ready to go out. These are quite well rooted. These have been hanging out for a while because I needed to generate more. We will do softwood cuttings from this room quite often if we can't get enough from culture as soon as we'd like. Some things we'll do better from softwood cuttings. So we'll generate as many as we can in culture, plant them, and then take cuttings from them in this room. So that's why these have been hanging out for a while. I've been taking cuttings off of them, which you can see right here. So these are cuttings off of that lilac. This is the new lilac for Gardens Alive. So these are tip cuttings. And these will root quite quickly, and they'll be beautiful plants. Let's see what else we can find. What else do we have? We have a hydrangea. This is hydrangea snowsickle in a plug. It's a hydrangea quercifolia. This is done by Plants Nouveau. It's one of their plants. Here's another rose, completely acclimated. This is a new rose for Teslar. We sent these to Canada. The same ones that you saw in culture, that's this rose right here. So you can see the process as we scale things up. I think that's probably all I need to show you in here. We're just going to take you out to the greenhouse. Oh wait, I want to show you shipping. So we have kind of a unique shipping method that my mother set up years ago. So if we're not going to ship in plugs, which go out in the flats on a pallet, you've probably seen that before. If they're bed rooted, this is the way that we ship. These are actually blueberries that we're re-isolating. When things get dirty, we'll plant them, we'll take more cuttings off of them, and then we'll clean them up and put them back in culture. So this is just a demonstration for you. These were bed rooted. These are probably bigger than we normally ship out, but it'll work for this purpose. So you can see they're well rooted. Some of them are quite well rooted. And we'll just set down a piece of plastic, a piece of paper towel, we'll spray it down with water, and then we're gonna just line them out on this plastic and paper towel, give it a good spritz. We'll put 50 in a roll. We call them jelly rolls. Probably 51 to 55, just because we want a few extra in there. We got the label, then you fold it up. And we're going to roll it, just like that. Then you put a piece of tape on it, and boom, there's a jelly roll of tissue culture rooted cuttings. This way we can put 1,600 in a box. So it's quite efficient. We'll have 32 rolls. and we'll ship a lot out to the West Coast that way or to Ohio, and it'll cost maybe $150 for 1,600 plants. So it's cost effective for the shipping. The pallet will cost maybe $1,000 to go out to the West Coast, but it's a minimum of 5,000 plants. So that also is fairly cost effective, and we could fit more than 5,000 plants on a pallet. So yeah, that is the shipping method for the rooted microcuttings that we do bed rooted. And we'll just head out to our greenhouse real quickly. We don't.
Oh, Liz, you just got muted. Nathan, can you unmute that?
Got it? Okay.
There we go. Yeah, we're good.
Perfect. Thank you. So we don't have a lot of greenhouse space because we don't need it. It's not our niche. And we do need it in order to bring in the plants that people want propagated. So this is the most effective way we find to put things in the filter. I hope that you can hear me because there's fans running in here. It is a greenhouse. So this is just our little greenhouse. It's 100 feet by 30 or whatever it is. I don't remember. We have two. We really only use one. We built another because we did 100,000 wine grapes and then another 100,000 aronia. We haven't done that for a little while. So we actually rent out the second greenhouse to the Madison Food Pantry where they grow vegetables in order to give to food pantries. If we don't use it, somebody might as well use it. So this is the kind of plant that will come in for a new isolation. So this is Elizabeth Ashley Rose from Anthony Hoke at Silver Falls. And we will manipulate this plant in a way where we can get new cuttings from it. We're looking for something to put in the culture. Well, there's not really anything on this right now. It's too late in the season. We really prefer to get plants in the winter so that when they flush in the spring, we can get cuttings off of them then. So customers will send us 1, maybe 3, maybe 5 plants potted, and then we'll get cuttings off of them, hopefully in the spring. It's a little late in the season, like I said. There's not a whole lot of new growth going on anymore. So blueberries, we do a lot of blueberries. This is a southern variety, Georgia something. That a lot of times they don't have names. They'll come in with just a number. So this is Georgia 127. So that's a new blueberry for the southern zones. We do a few liners. We have a greenhouse, so you might as well fill it with some things in production instead of just holding plants for isolation in here. This is Scarlet Fire. This is another one of Tom Molnar's at Rutgers, one of his introductions. They are having trouble with bracket incompatibility on a lot of these dogwoods, so we're trying to produce more own tissue culture. This plant was put into a plug. Actually, we bed rooted these because we knew we were going to take them out here just a couple months ago from the lab, and this is how big it has gotten already. Right, a beautiful plant. This is Venus, the older variety of dogwood. Nice big leaves. We do a fair amount of Amelanker as liners, and they go to our customer, St. Lawrence in New York. So this is season Amelanker. We do a lot of Amelanker. It's another one of those things that most tissue labs do. This is Halesia monticola rosea. It's a beautiful tree. We don't do a lot of them, but we had a small order for liners this year. So liners are a way that we can sell to people that don't have greenhouse space. These are ready to go in the field. They're our largest size that we sell. So that's our greenhouse space. Like I said, we mostly use this just to bring in the new plants so that we can manipulate them whatever way we want to put them in culture. We have a hazelnut Americana project that we're working on, and we brought plants in here, and we've had them for a few years in the greenhouse, manipulating them so that we get the right kind of cuttings that we want to put them in a culture so that they'll be successful there. So it's important for us to have this space, even though we probably don't make a lot of money on our liners. It's not the bread and butter, but it's necessary for our lab to have this space. So I think that's pretty much the tour for you guys, and I'm sure sure there's a few questions that I've generated. I'm sure I've forgotten a few things. So we're just gonna turn my end off. Sean's gonna talk to you for a little bit, and I'm gonna move inside to the office and do a Q&A with you guys.
All right, awesome. So a lot of questions, about 15 or 16 questions flew in, and then a few more in chat. I just want to make a few announcements while we have a second. Chuck Martin sent a few announcements for me to make. So anyway, I'll get started. First announcement is Sean Halloran, I'm going to give a tour on August 27th. So that'll be our second micro meeting. Again, August 27th, probably 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. And we'll send out updates just like we did for this micro meeting, you know, maybe a couple weeks beforehand, another week beforehand, and just let you know about that. If a company or individual would like to be featured on a micro meeting, please reach out to Chuck. His email is pretty easy. It's just Martin, M-A-R-T-I-N, at dowgardens.org, D-O-W gardens with an S.org. And then our plan is really to do around one of these micro meetings per month. And, you know, we obviously want to hear any feedback that you might have about how this meeting went, how the August meeting goes, and future meetings. We want this to be, you know, a collaboration of the IPPS community, and we want to spotlight as many different growers and individuals as we can. So Liz is back. So I just went through Chuck's announcements that he laid out for us, and it looks like we have probably more questions than you have time to answer.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. And you're welcome to email me, you know, after this, and we'll get as many answered as we can, realistically.
So in trying to be fair about this, I will start with the first question, which actually was in the registration. Samantha Lang asked, what are some pathways for students or recent graduates to get into, to set themselves up for a career in micropropagation?
So first, did you introduce my mother? This is my mother and also my partner. She started the lab. This is Deb McCowan. She's, you know, one of the pioneers of tissue culture, especially woody tissue culture. So welcome, Mom.
Hi.
So for that question, I actually asked my father before he left, because he's the professor emeritus. And he suggested taking science-related courses, especially in plants, if you can find them at your local university or technical college. And then a lot of times it's really more apprenticeship these days. So if you can find somewhere that you can get your feet in and work with somebody on the plants, that would be my #1 suggestion. And there's not a lot of tissue culture labs, especially little ones like us, but they are out there. Do you have any other?
No, I thought about that. I saw that question come through. It is a difficult place to break in. There are many labs that are in-house, and they're kind of hard to find, but if you could find them, that would be a place to start. For example, there are a number of in-house labs over in the Milwaukee area of Wisconsin where they're doing specialty hospitals just for their own production. That would be a place where a young person might be able to find a job.
And our #1 way for finding employees is to post on the job site for the UW-Madison students. Often we have full-time jobs, but they'll start as part-time for them, and then they'll end up staying here. So look at your local jobs boards for the universities. You never know what you'll find.
And are there any resources for people to find local tissue culture labs where they could do an internship or anything like that? Any organizations you recommend, like SIVB or anything like that?
I can't think of anything myself. Mark may know better than I do. IPPS is great. So you're in the right spot already if you're here.
So, okay, next question. I think it was Brian, but the questions are now all, oh, Brian Maynard asked, how was the switch to LED affected your electricity costs?
Significantly lower. I don't know exactly how much. First of all, my state helped pay for us to switch from fluorescents to LEDs, which is a big help. I think that they put in something like half, and it cost us, well, we have 640 light bulbs. We have a lot. And so to switch over was thousands of dollars, and the state helped us significantly.
Yeah, the plants responded well. I haven't seen a whole lot of difference from the fluorescent to the LED. And like I said, a lot of the savings is in the cooling, because the room ran so hot. In fact, it was so hot that we couldn't keep it cool enough in some spots. And actually our planting room is LED as well. And the bulbs that we got fit into the old ballast, so we didn't have to switch all that out, because that would have been a huge expense as well. So in the rooting room as well, I was frying plants, and there was nothing I could do about it when I needed to run all the benches. So that's probably the #1 savings for us, is in the heat load, and then not killing plants with, you know, it being too hot.
We used to have to air condition the culture room in February. I mean, that's how hot it was, and we don't need to do that anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. No seasonal defective order here. It's all lit and warm.
Plants are very happy. What Ryan asked, sort of a follow-up question to that. What LED lights do you use? I assume brand or type. And then what is the PPFD?
I don't even know. I think there's Sylvania.
Are they Sylvania? I don't know. I'll go get one.
Yeah. We don't have to hardly, the LEDs last so long that we shouldn't have to reorder for some time. And she can go grab one and get it for you.
Ashley Clayton also asked, have you seen any good effects on plant growth when you switch to LED? You sort of answered that already.
Yeah, I haven't seen a whole lot of difference, at least not that's traceable to the LEDs. I mean, there's so many other factors that could be involved. And I think the temperature being more well controlled is probably a benefit overall with the LED.
What is, Brian Maynard asked, what is the approximate cost of getting a new plant into culture?
So we have a range of costs depending on what the plant is. We call it an isolation fee when we get a new plant in, and that varies depending on how hard we think it's going to be to isolate a plant. So you give us a lilac, give us a Syringa vulgaris, we're pretty sure we're going to be able to get it in pretty quickly. So that's going to be our lower cost. You give us something like hazelnut americana, it's going to cost you more to put into culture. And then we have a minimum order per year per plant if it's proprietary. So you have to buy 5,000 a year. We set the price once we have it in culture and we know how hard it is to do. And we're fairly good at estimating how much that's going to be. So there's an isolation fee, and there's no guarantee to that. It will take us a little while to get it in the culture. And then once it's growing in culture at a established rate, we can put it into production, and then the customer has to buy 5,000 a year. And generally, for a rooted microcutting, like I said, that's mostly what we sell. They're probably $1.30, $1.50 each. You want to show them what the bulb is? Oh,
yeah,
they're Phillips.
They're Phillips, and the nice thing I forgot is they're plastic instead of glass.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're lighter, and we don't have the potential for breakage all the time. And if anybody wants to email us about the details, we can respond to the email. Yeah.
Awesome. I think 2 people asked this question, but Ashley Clayton asked it first. Why do you not use 2IP, a hormone?
Because plants like see it better.
All right, that's
I mean,
a
they
good
just
answer.
absolutely love it. You know, for example, 2IP is really cheap, but better example perhaps is benzoadenine, which we do use a small amount on. We use it for amyl anchors. And I can probably buy 5 grams of benzoadenine for $20. on a good day, I can get 1 gram of zeatin for 700. That's the difference.
Yeah, that's rock bottom price.
But they love it, and we're using 1 micromolar as a concentration, which goes a long way. And if it grows a better plant, you know, it's better for us.
Ty Seeley asks, how long do you keep plant tissues in culture before needing to obtain new material and revitalize the culture?
We don't believe in revitalization, to be perfectly honest. You know, once we go to growing in culture, unless there's some reason to re-isolate, we don't. And I've been in business now since I incorporated in 1981, so I've been doing it for a while. And I bet you I could figure out something that I started back in the 80s. The reason for re-isolating is if they become contaminated, and bacteria is the big foe. Yep.
So back to the hormone, what's your supplier for cytokine? Where do you purchase from?
We've been buying most of it from Phytotechnology.
That's a very popular tissue
There
culture.
are cheaper sources that we've found, but you know, it's risky to change the source and have a whole bunch of plants on something that may not be the same. And so, you know, for an extra $500, we're growing hundreds of thousands of plants on that, and it's worth it for us to have a consistency there.
Russell James asked, what other ericaceous shrub species do you have in culture, or have you cultured?
Well, rhododendron, vaccinium, those are the 2 that come to mind immediately. We do a lot of blueberries. I have done cranberries to get them started. My husband was a cranberry breeder and introduced a cookbook called High Red, which is now pretty much the industry standard. And to get it going quickly from the plants that he bred, the tissue culture. Now we don't have to do that. They're easily done from cuttings.
Another question about taxa. Have you had success with quercus?
Everybody asks that.
Frankly, not much.
That's Nina Bassick's
Part
department,
of the problem with something like quercus is the episodic growth factor. And to be really successful in tissue culture, you need the plant to grow continuously all the time. In our culture room, there is no such thing as dormancy, even though we grow birch trees and elm trees and all kinds of things that you think of requiring a dormancy. They don't in that room. But quercus has very episodic growth, and so, you know, they keep going down on you. And I just have not found them very amenable to doing TC.
Patrick Peterson asked, if thrips are a problem in stage 1 or 2, how do you control them in that stage 3 grow room?
Thrips are always a threat. I mean, there is no question they're a threat to tissue culture. You can see whether it's legal to put orthene in your media, but then you run the risk of having your thrips develop resistance to orthene. I don't know whether anybody was really paying attention when Elizabeth was showing you the culture room.
I told them.
But everything is
About the
bagged.
baggies.
We
Yeah.
buy a lot of Ziploc baggies, and we take the time to zip every 2 cultures in a baggie. We tried putting like 30 cultures in the baggie, but then we had all kinds of humidity problems in there. So we've gone to two cultures to a sandwich bag.
So just creating another physical barrier, right?
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
And hi, Patrick. It's much easier to control them once they're out of culture because we can do some spraying in the rooting room. So I don't worry so much once they're out of culture, and we rarely have any pests in the rooting room. Greenhouse, yes, of course, but rarely in the rooting room, and rarely do we get thrips in culture. And in fact, I think a lot of the time when we get thrips in culture, they may come in through the ventilation, but they also may come in the leaves because thrips can lay their eggs inside the leaf. And so surface washing may not get them out, so they may in fact hatch once we have them in culture. And we have had sterile thrips, like it's completely clean cultures. The #1 way you find thrips is that they're dirty. Mom always says they don't wipe their feet when they come into the culture. But we have had clean cultures with thrips in them. And I still have nightmares about that.
My university entomologists were fascinated.
Yeah.
Awesome. Jamie Powers says would love more info about rooting lilac tip cuttings.
So, hi Jamie, nice to see you here. You were probably referring to the tray of lilacs that I had grown from culture and then took cuttings off of them from the ones that I generated from culture and had been acclimated. The closer that you get to culture, the easier they're going to root. So if you have our liners and you're trying to root cuttings from that, it's not going to be as easy as what we're doing in the rooting room. They're going to be more juvenile the closer that you get to culture, and they're going to root easier. You can try dipping them in a hormone. We are big proponents of dip and grow, which is a IBA-NAA mix. You have to be careful because it's alcohol-based and it will burn things, but we find it quite effective. So my suggestion would be to try something like that when you're trying to root a syringa.
Tanya asks, why do you grow up under lights in this room and not your greenhouse?
Well, we can control everything much easier in a enclosed rooting room. The temperature is controlled, the lighting's controlled. We're in Wisconsin. Most of our stuff is coming out in February from the culture room. So we can't grow things in the greenhouse. We can't root them in the greenhouse in February. There's just no way. We have a heater, but that's just to keep everything from completely freezing to death. So in a controlled environment, it's much easier. We can also control the humidity, which is number one for getting us to root things. So it's very important for us to have indoor grow room.
Emma Brown asks, there's 4 parts to this question. Are you able to sterilize and reuse your trays and domes? And do you compost, autoclave, augment, and reuse any soilless media? Basically, are you able to reuse your trays and your soil?
Yes, we do reuse our trays. We'll sterilize them, brush them off, sterilize them, just with a clean grow or something like that, and reuse them. So yes, we reuse the trays as many times as we can until they start to break down. Same with the domes. So they've probably been used, I don't know, 5, 6, 10 times, depending on.
Till they crack.
Till they crack, exactly. And we have to order a few new ones every year. And a lot of them will get shipped out. So for shipping in trays, they'll get shipped out. And we do not reuse the mix. Generally, the mix is composted, and often we'll give them to our gardening friends because, you know, it's lovely for the vegetable gardens. So it does get used. Nothing gets thrown out.
Have you saved any plants from extinction, or are you particularly proud of any species that you've worked with? Another question from Emma.
Well, we did grow Lindera melicifolia, which is also called pondberry. That was from Mississippi, I think. Yeah. And they were coming through and doing a new development, and they wanted to keep that species going. So we grew a whole bunch of them, and
For the Forest Service.
yeah, for the Forest Service. This was a fair amount of time ago. And I think they ended up, what did they do with that? Killing a bunch of them, again, because they did a whole bunch of tests on them to see where they would survive. But we have done endangered species. It's not our niche. I'm sure there's other labs that just keep things in culture in order to keep them alive. But we're a commercial lab. It's not what we do.
Richard Schnall asks a business question, a money question. Hi, can I get a list of liners ready to go to the field?
Just give us an email and we'll send you an availability list. So we're a contract grower. So generally we don't have availability lists except for liners. Generally we'll get orders just about this time of year and then we'll fill them for the spring. But we can put out an availability for liners, yes. So just send us an email.
Mark asks, why did you choose to store your cultures in cardboard boxes rather than plastic tubs? Just maybe plastic tubs would be easier.
The cultures once we've made the media.
Oh. I don't know. We just buy the boxes from Uline. They're storage boxes for, you know, files, and they're readily available. They've got handles on them. We've got
It's
women.
just-
We can move stuff around. It's just,
Just
for us,
what
it
we've
works.
been using, and we obviously reuse them many times as we can, and we'll tape a label on the side of the carton every time we refill it with a new media. So that's our way of, you know, labeling them so we know what box we're picking up. It's just the way we've always done it. It's cheap. It's protecting them from the light. That room is always cool, so we don't find that we need to put them in a cooler. I've heard labs that do that. We go through it fairly fast. We make our own. If it gets old, which rarely happens, we just throw it out and make a new batch.
And every batch of media that we make is individually numbered. We label them 1 to 100, and then we start over. There's a batch number, and there's a date, and they're color coded by the hormone that we use. You know, all kinds of visual signals, so that techs know right away which batch of media they're pulling.
Peter Birnbaum asked, do you grow azaleas? Any major differences between deciduous and evergreen material that you've seen?
No,
No?
We do grow azaleas. We've been doing it
and we've
for a
done
long.
both.
They've been in culture here for probably
As old as you are.
as old as I am. She started the company when I was 1, so. And honestly, you know, azaleas, they're beautiful. We don't sell a lot of them anymore. I'm sure a lot of nurseries have the same song on those.
And part of our problem is Wisconsin grows alfalfa. And if you understand alfalfa, that if you grow alfalfa, your soil pHs are 6.5 to 7.5, and that's not azalea country. And so if you want to grow azaleas and rhododendrons in Wisconsin, you have to really be dedicated to acidify your soil. And that takes a pretty sophisticated gardener.
Yeah, they go great in culture.
Samantha asked, are there any new plants you plan to incorporate into production?
Well, we're constantly getting new plants in. We have new roses. I showed you some of those. What else have we got in? Some new hydrangea. You know, there's always new hydrangea coming in.
Blueberries, we always get new blueberries.
Always
There's a
new
breeding
blueberries.
program in Michigan.
And I mean, we have some new plants that we can't tell you about yet. That are very
Secret.
exciting, but yeah, proprietary right now. And like I said, this is one of the ways where somebody has a very exciting new plant and they have 5 of them and they need 5,000 by next year. So this is the way that they do it. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, I think that's probably, we should wrap it up. Janelle Morrison just asked a question about sharing this video. Janelle, I just reach out to Chuck. I'll give his contact info again at the end. It's just martin@dowgardens.org, and we can talk about sharing this. But our plan is right now to make this available to at least to IPPS members, and that sort of, we'll figure out how that's going to work. But beyond that, we'll have to discuss how that will be shared. But yeah, thank you, Liz. Thank you, Deb,
everybody
for joining us.
It's awesome that we got everybody from around the world, and I hope that you join us next time. John's going to do the next one, and I'll be hosting, so you'll see our lovely faces again. But we're hoping to do one a month, and there's also, I think you probably mentioned, the IPPS North American Summit that will be coming up in October. So that's a joint venture between the Eastern, the Western, and the Southern. We're each going to take half a day and run a virtual summit through IPPS. So look forward to that. There should be some great talks and some great tours, and I'm sure they'll all be much more professional than what I've put on here. But hopefully you got a little idea of what we do here at Knight Hollow Nursery in a small little tissue culture lab in Wisconsin.
It was perfect, Liz. It was very professional.
Thank you. And there's your baby.
Yeah, you can hear the baby in the background. Thanks everybody for coming. Again, email Chuck at martin@dowgardens.org if you need to give them feedback or suggest a tour. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.